Hey everybody, welcome to Watch Parties here at Christ Community Church. My name is Pastor Brad,
I'm Pastor Joel.
and we are so excited that you're joining us. However you're joining us, you might be in a big party, a small party, a party of one, you might be in a living room, a dorm room, wherever you're joining us from, and however you're joining us, we're so excited, and we want to invite you to pursue Jesus with us during
Amen.
our time together here. So we're going to jump into a short teaching that's going to really set you up for some good discussion, either with your watch party or even some reflection by yourself. And then we are going to jump into spiritual invitation together. And what we want to cover is, this past Sunday, I closed out our God Is series where we were talking about different attributes about God. And the one we want to dive into deeper tonight is the fact that God is present. Pastor Joel, you want to jump in and share with us?
Yeah. I think God is present is such a really cool fact and also a cool relationship that we can have with him. And sometimes we get the two confused because we know that God is omnipresent. We know that he's everywhere all at once. We know that on this timeline of history that God is the paper that it's written on, that he's just outside of it all, and that he just exists everywhere. But that can be a little bit factual. And we have a very relational God who is present. Even his name is Emmanuel, which means God with us. Yep. And I think that he wants to be with us. He wants to be for you in a special way. And that's what we want to talk about. We can never be apart from him. We could never escape the love of God. And that's just a really exciting thing. In Psalm 75, it says that we give thanks to you, O God. We give thanks because your name is near. And it's language that we don't use now, but at that time, the language that the Jews were using of God, your name is near, was language as if to say, not that you call him near, that that's his name, but that he is, it's such an intrinsic part of who God is, a part of his nature that just you can't separate from him, that you could even just call him near. That's how important it is to him, how very close he is to each of us. I think the presence of God is so important. Sometimes it is a fact. Sometimes we don't feel it. Yeah. But the reality is his heart is always for us.
Mm-hmm. But we struggle sometimes, right? I mean, every single person of faith, every person who calls himself a Christian, goes to church on Sundays, whatever label you want to put on it, we still struggle to discipline ourselves, sometimes we think, or struggle to be aware of the presence of God, to really live in that awareness. And I love this this kind of comparison we're talking about, the difference between God's omnipresence and God being present with us. On Sunday, in my message, I talked about hydrogen being one of the most abundant elements in the universe, like 3/4 of everything that we know physically, like that we could touch, see, experience, is made of hydrogen, even 60-something% of our human bodies. But just because I know that the chair over there and the wall over there is made mostly of hydrogen doesn't mean I feel like I'm more familiar with hydrogen, or that I know hydrogen, or I'm walking in relationship with hydrogen. It could be the same way with God. Just because you're telling me God is present, God is everywhere, I can't leave his presence. I can't push him away. I can't run away from him, really. He's there wherever I go. What we really want to do tonight is really lean into what you said, Pastor Joel, the relationship aspect. When we say he's near, close, we're not just talking about proximity, we're talking about relationship. So Pastor Joel, you and I are close in proximity, but we're also close in relationship. And that dual meaning there, we want to talk about the relationship side of God's presentness, his nearness, his closeness with us. And I think there are reasons why we struggle with this. Reasons, we all have our own reasons, and maybe we have multiple ones going on at the same time. Like maybe one of your reasons is you're busy or distracted, and you think to yourself, if I could just get life to slow down a little bit, I could finally work on this nearness with God thing. I could finally kind of zero in on his presence. Or maybe you're just someone who likes routine. You're like, I'm fine with fine. I'm okay with this thing just being okay. I don't need the deeper things in my relationship with God. Or maybe you're hiding from the presence of God. You're thinking, if God got close to me, then he'd see all the things I don't want him to see, or know all the things I don't want him to know. Or maybe there's some disappointment. I tried being in God's presence. I tried getting close to him. I tried experiencing this relationship, and it didn't really change anything, didn't matter, so I just kind of left disappointed. I'm not going to try it again. But I think that if you really break through those things and really kind of push past the excuses, I don't mean to be harsh there, but they're kind of just excuses, right? Like distractions or busyness let's just call it what it is. We make time for what we value.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a Bills fan and the game's on Sunday at 1 p.m. and you really care about it, you will move everything else out of the way to be there at kickoff. If you have a kid who's playing sports, it doesn't matter what meeting is going on at work, you're leaving work early to make sure you're there to root for them on the sidelines, right? You make time for what you value. How about routine? I'm fine with being fine. Well, that's all right until you realize the urgency of the fact that God has something amazing, an amazing gift he wants to give you in his presence, and the reality that Christ died to give you more than just okay and more than just fine.
Yeah.
And so if someone was really sacrificial and intentional and thoughtful in giving you a gift for your birthday or Christmas or just because they love you, you wouldn't say, nah, I'm fine without this gift. No, you would be very thankful, very grateful, very intentional, and spend time with them, thanking them, and opening the gift with them and having fun with them. How about hiding? Well, we already covered this a couple Sundays ago when I talked about God being all-knowing. God knows every secret of every heart. There's nothing you can hide from him. So let's just relax and see the fact that God sees everything about your life. You don't have a reason to hide. There's no need to hide from him. He still chooses you, loves you, sent his son to die for you. And then finally, disappointment. I think disappointment comes from, I prayed for this thing, this external thing to happen or change, and nothing happened or changed. So now I'm disappointed and I'm done asking God.
Yeah.
But what if you change your perspective and your posture to see that when it comes to the presence and nearness and closeness of God and a relationship with him, that really the miracle that happens there is what happens inside of you, not what happens outside or externally. And so, disappointment can poison our hearts and relationships. And God cares most about your heart. So right now it's time to lay down that disappointment at his feet and just say, God, I'm ready to be near. I'm ready to be more aware of your presence in my life and walk in this relationship.
Yeah, it's just like any other relationship. I mean, it's so much more in so many ways, but sometimes we overthink it, and we're not talking about this omnipresent God. We're talking about Emmanuel, God with us, and we're talking about just relationships, and it could be compared to any relationship. Anybody has had the type of experience where you've had friends that you've been really close to, and then all of a sudden, you just haven't heard from them in a while. And it might be somebody that you speak to every day. You might actually just be worried. Are they okay? You might feel the distance. And I think that it's just as simple as trying to reconnect. Yeah. And what about like a dating relationship that changes into marriage? You start with this, shallow relationship where you're just getting to know each other. You're not really sure how much to make yourself vulnerable to the other person. You're just kind of keeping it really shallow and light. But then changing that into a marriage relationship means getting really committed to each other, really vulnerable to each other. You're not dating anymore. And I think that sometimes we overthink, how do I relate to God? And really, we're made in his image, and we can use these other examples and relate to God the same way.
Yeah. We're kind of talking about relationship skills, right?
Yeah.
And we're using some of these like human to human relationships as a way to think, oh yeah, I do that in some of my human relationships, and maybe I do that to God too, right? The distant friend, distance breeds doubt. So now, I feel distant from God. Now I'm doubting, does he really love me? Does he really see me? All the things I was believing so powerfully and strongly on Sunday, when the message was preached or the worship music was going on. Now on Wednesday, I'm doubting it because I feel a little distant.
We've all experienced that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the depth of relationship you're talking about, from going from like dating and engaged to a marriage. You're learning new relationship skills. And I think some of us just need to learn new relationship skills with God.
Yeah.
I think of another one that's really close to my heart, between parents and children. Now, I could probably go into, the perspective of as a parent now, but really I'm thinking about myself as a child when I was young, and my brother and sister are much older. So when I spent time with my mom, it was just the two of us during the day. She'd take me shopping and all kinds of things that we like to do together. And when I was a little kid, I would do what all little kids do. When we got to the department store, I'd find a clothes rack and go hide inside of it, right? Remember those
like
circular?
A fort.
Yeah, exactly. And you're hidden in there, and you're like, who is mom going to find me? Except that when mom would like walk around the corner to keep looking at things, and I pop out and she's not there, now I'm terrified, right?
Yeah.
And I think about, the taking a relationship for granted piece. As long as mom is near in proximity, I kind of take it for granted that she's here and that she's the only person I know in the store and that she's my safety and my security, all those things. And then when mom's not there, now I'm freaked out. And I think that's kind of like a really good way to sum up all of Israel's history in the Old Testament, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, God's near, he's moving, the Red Sea, all those kinds of things. Now's a good time to choose wickedness and like, worship idols. Boom, trouble happens. Oh, God, please help me. It's like me popping out of that little, clothes rack and screaming and saying, Mom, come. And I'm so grateful, right? And all of us are. When God responds like a father to his children, when we cry out in trouble and he's there and he goes, oh, don't worry, I was just right around the corner. I was still near, God would say, just like my mom would. But I think we can take advantage of God's nearness or choose to not really appreciate it sometimes and just kind of like, well, yeah, I know God's there, but I'm doing my own thing right now. And we've got to progress and learn these new relationship skills because they're really all about value and valuing our relationship with God. And so we want to kind of bring this to a point of discussion here. If you're, again, in a watch party with others, we're going to supply you with some great questions now that you can talk about as a group. Even if you're watching this by yourself, you can still kind of use this as some time of reflection. And I'm going to read these questions so we kind of all know what's going on here. But what's going to happen is after I read them, they're going to pop up on the screen, 15-minute timer in the video. You can let it play out. If you need more time, you can hit pause and keep discussing together. But let's jump into these questions and really try to dive deeper into this. Let's start with this one. What in your life has kept you from pursuing a greater awareness of God's presence? What in your life has been a hindrance, a limitation? We talked about some of those reasons earlier, being distracted and busy, hiding, being disappointed. Maybe you've got your own words to fill in the blank there. I like being in control, and I don't want to have to give up control because I'm afraid to do that. Maybe you've got one or two or three other things you'd like to share.
Yeah,
all of the above. Yeah, you can share as a group when we get into this question time. Question number 2 is, how would you live differently? How would you pray differently? How would you hope differently? How would you wake up and attack the day differently if you had a greater awareness of his nearness to you every single second, every moment of the day? We tend to kind of take these hats off and put new hats on. We come to church, we put on our church hat. Yep, God, you're so near. And then when we leave church, we take it off, we put on a different kind of hat. But what if you lived every day with that awareness of his presence with you everywhere that you go? And then finally, what are some ways that you can practice your awareness of God's presence throughout this week, while you're at work, while you're cooking dinner, while you're with your family, while you're with your friends, whatever you're doing, every moment, just practicing that awareness with God? Okay, we're going to take a little break here, 15 minutes or more if you need it. Go ahead and have a little discussion here, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, welcome back. I hope that discussion was really good for you guys. But we are going to try to land the plane now here in a spiritual invitation. Pastor Joel, why don't you help us here?
Yeah, so what I'm going to invite you all to do is to take some time right now with your watch party or just on your own if you're watching on your own tonight. But let's go ahead and put on some worship music if that makes it easier, or maybe just sit in silence, close your eyes, and let's just focus on the heart of God right now and invite Him to come and encounter us and to show us His nearness. We all have different ways of hearing from God. We all have different ways of knowing Him because we're all different. And He knows each of us best, and He knows how to reach out to each of us when He's present. Just this weekend, I was at the worship service on Sunday, and at the 9 a.m. service, I'm just worshiping God, minding my own business, and all of a sudden I just start to feel the weight of His presence as He drew near to me. But the really cool thing is that it was coming not just from above, it was coming from the left side, and He just kept pushing against me. And I felt myself, I had to brace myself on the ground. I was kneeling because He was just pushing against me. And He showed me a picture that I think any dog owner out there will be able to relate to, where a dog will come up to you and will just flop down next to you and just kind of press its weight against you, completely unaware of just the personal space. And the dog just kind of looks up at you just like, I'm here, you're here, and this is exactly what I want, and this is great. And it just was this moment after a week of kind of being in my own head and trying to be good enough and trying to do as well as other people. He showed up and He just said, no, this is what I want. I just want to be here with you in this moment. And what I did was I responded by focusing on that and just focusing on how close He was in that moment. And it turned into this really cool encounter with the Lord. And I think that that's something that He wants to do with all of us. And it will look different for you than it did for me because we're all different. He might just give you a sense of peace. He might share a scripture with you or remind you of something or give you a word. Or you might feel some kind of a physical sensation. He can speak anyway, and He knows how to do it best. So with your watch party now, we're going to sign off. Why don't you go ahead and just spend some time now and invite Him to show you His presence today.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on our next watch party video. All right.
See you then.
See you guys.